it has to, like, whoever we're interviewing, whoever we're bringing in, you know, like, has to, you know, convince us of, you know, like, a good style of play that we think, you know, like, will fit us, fit our culture, fit at least some of our players or the players that we have. Yes, like, style of play is going to be really key, you know, like, to what, how this new head coach, like, defines what he wants to do here.
All right, so that was Masai Ujiri about a month ago at the Raptors' end-of-season media availability, talking about what a new head coach in terms of boxes he needs to check. And it sounds like he found his guy. It only took a month, but Darko Rajakovic is the new head coach for the Toronto Raptors. Let's bring in Memphis Grizzlies reporter right now, Damichael Cole. Damichael, thanks so much for doing this. You heard Masai there off of the top. Does Darko check a lot of those boxes?
I think so. I think he checks a decent amount of those boxes. Again, you go two routes with this head coaching thing, and one of those routes you can go is, hiring a former head coach who's proven to do certain things. You're more familiar with his offensive principles, defensive principles, and things like that. Or you can go with a coach, you say, hey, a guy like Darko, where he's familiar with guys like Monty Williams, Taylor Jenkins. He comes from the Spurs background, Budenholzer background. He has a lot of connections to the right people in the association. So you tie all those things in, then he'll put his own flavor, his own little, sauce onto things. And Darko seems like he's a guy who's suitable to be a head coach in NBA and a head coach for the Raptors.
Damichael, the Grizzlies have had a great player development division the last couple of years, ascending to one of the best teams in the Western Conference for the last couple of years.
Yep.
Just how important was Darko in that player development with guys like Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr., and of course Ja Morant?
That's his calling card. When I saw the reports of him getting this job, immediately I knew what made him stand out among the candidates, and that's the player development. That is what we know about Darko. Offensive principle, defensive principle, we have an idea, right? We have an idea of what he'll bring to the table. But what we know 100% for a fact is Darko has had his hands directly tied to a lot of player development in the NBA, even going back before his time with the Grizzlies. It goes back to even when he was with the Thunder for 6 years. Remember, he was the first G League head coach that was born outside of North America in the history. So he got that head coaching opportunity, ran with it with the 66ers out there in OKC for a while, in Tulsa. And then he came to Memphis, after a year with the Suns. When he came to Memphis, Desmond Bane is the guy who stands out as the guy where you say, who did Darko greatly impact the most? It's Desmond Bane. Desmond Bane came to Memphis. You remember that draft. I know I have a lot of people in Raptors country say, oh, Malachi Flynn, we could have had Desmond Bane. I hear it a lot. But the thing with those two, Desmond Bane, after his rookie year, mostly a spot-up shooter, right? Didn't do much off the dribble and things like that. Desmond Bane, Summer League 2021, Darko put him on the ball, and they basically threw the house at him. It was very uncomfortable for Des. A lot of just dribbling violations, things like that. And it wasn't his second season. The second season, we saw the improvement, but it was his third year where he went from 2.7 assists this past season to 4.4 assists per game. And now Desmond Bane looks like a legitimate candidate to average 5 assists every single season. He's become a great secondary playmaker. Playmaking is a big part of what Darko worked on with him, Zaire Williams, Jaren Jackson Jr., Santi Aldama. And that's where you see, the impact of his player developmental skills.
We keep hearing about this player developmental stuff with Darko, which is great for the Toronto Raptors. A guy like Pascal Siakam, how can Darko unlock the best from him if he so happens to stay with the Raptors moving forward?
Right. Yeah. So Pascal right up there with Scotty Barnes. Well, the two guys, Scotty even more so with Scotty, but with Pascal too. Those two guys are where it stood out to me as, man, that's where you can see some fun, right? When I think of Pascal, he and Jaren do a lot of similar things. He's done more, back to the basket things lately in this part of his career. But you remember Pascal 2-3 years ago was pretty much just downhill, getting downhill, playing from the perimeter, situations like that. That's exactly how Jaren Jackson Jr.'s progression as an offensive player has come along too. And now you're seeing Jaren being more forceful around the rim and things like that. But here's where Darko's impact stands on, because this is what a lot of people may not know yet to this point about his impact on Jaren Jackson Jr. Before each game, you know, Darko and Jaren will work together, and then they go sit on the bench. They watch film together. They go over a couple things. They want to emphasize this game going against these opponents. This is what we're working on. And then he and Jaren, usually about an hour and a half before the game, they come out and they work together for about 10, 15 minutes before Jaren goes back to the locker room. But it's the inverted pick and rolls that you could see is where he had his impact with Jaren. You know, that's something that the Grizzlies kind of got Jaren more involved in. Jaren is not really good as a roller. That's not something that, you know, you look at the advanced stats, his numbers as a pick and roll roller, not that good. But you put the ball in Jaren Jackson Jr.'s hands, you allow him to create those mismatches. He's very dominant, and that's what you can see, you know, more of with, you know, Pascal as well. I know that's some things that Toronto's tried to do in the past with him, but there's also this emphasis on spacing. You know, Toronto can get more shooters. Now that you got a new head coach, I'm sure he's going to have some influence on say, hey, look, we need some more shooters around here. And they're going to probably honor that request since he's the new guy around.
It is a big jump, right, from being the assistant coach to a head coach, right? And the personality traits you need for that job. You know, you have a real thick skin, obviously. You got to manage people, staff. From what you know about Darko, does he fit that? Very cool guy. I think it's always a TBD when you talk about how a guy can fill that role, because at the end of the day, as an assistant, you're in the shadows, right? You know, even you could come up with the whole game plan for a game, and we don't know that. But after the game, if that game plan goes to crap, the head coach is going to be the guy taking all the bullets for it, and you're just in the locker room, you're asleep, and no one's thinking, oh, that was all Darko's fault, actually. Like, let's go get him. Like, no one thinks of that. So it's going to be a different seat. But again, from what I know, we talk to him, you know, a lot just away from the mic, right? And he's one of those assistant coaches. He always comes up to you. He goes out of his way to greet a lot of the media members, comes up, give you a fist bump, asks you how you're doing. Real genuine guy. So I think, you know, he's going to establish a bunch of good relationships with the media people out there. I mean, I don't know too much about what happened in Toronto, but from what I've heard from just talking to people out there, it doesn't seem like Nick Nurse was the most friendly guy in the world. And I think just from what I know about Darko, he's very much more charismatic. He'll be more appealing from that standpoint, much more of a player's coach. The players in Memphis love that guy. I mean, that's kind of how I got a lot of my knowledge on Darko, to the point where I started talking to him about it, because Zaire Williams was telling me things like, man, the things he does offensively I've never seen before. Or you go to Desmond Bane, who basically said what I said earlier about, man, a lot of my playmaking improvement, my on-the-ball improvement was directly tied to Darko. And you hear Jaren. All these guys love him and what he brings. You know, he's a fun guy. They sometimes laugh at him because he has this buzzword. And I guarantee you guys are going to hear it throughout the season, and the players are going to catch on to it. It's going to become a little funny thing around there. And he always tells the Grizzlies players to play with swag. So there was times this season where we bring it up. We'd say, hey, you know, the coaches have been saying that they want the team to play with a little bit more swag lately. And one of the players will look up and they'll say something like, Darko told you that, kid. You know, it's Darko. It's just a Darko thing. And now it rubbed off on Taylor Jenkins. He talks a lot about the Grizzlies playing with swagger. But all that goes directly into how Darko carries himself and how he wants the team to. He wants them to be loose. He wants them to be free. And guess what? If you watch the Grizzlies, even from afar, the one thing everyone knew about the Grizzlies is they played with swag. And that's something I think that'll translate over to Toronto.
I'm always interested to hear what people from down south have, what their perception of the Toronto Raptors is. Yeah. So, Damichael, let me ask you this. What's your perception from far of the Toronto Raptors currently constructed?
Yeah, it seems like it's a misfit type thing right now, or they're one piece away, because I'm looking at Toronto and I'm seeing all these teams say, oh, we want OG Anunoby. Oh, we want Pascal Siakam. Oh, Fred VanVleet's about to be a free agent. We want him. And I'm like, man, if all these teams want all these dudes from Toronto, why ain't Toronto a top 5 team in the Eastern Conference? Like, it's got to be some misfit things going on over there. But then, you know, I go back to the championship year. I go back to the years before that when they were top, you know, the top tier of the Eastern Conference with DeMar DeRozan. And a lot of the pieces are still there. You know, Pascal, you know, Fred VanVleet, you know, OG Anunoby. So it's like, I feel like it's a team that's close. I like what they did in reacquiring, Siakam to bring it back over there, because that was the position. It was like, what are they going to do about center? And Precious is a guy in Memphis. A lot of people in Memphis love them some Precious. So they monitor what he's doing over there really closely. But it seems like talent-wise, they have some talent, man. If you could somehow get Fred VanVleet back, I think Malachi Flynn is a guy to really watch under the development of a coach, like Darko. I talked about the situation that Desmond Bane was being put in. I think that's something you could try with Malachi, see how he flourishes in those type of roles as well. But yeah, from here, for me, it's like you got some talent, but they gotta put this thing together. Maybe it's one piece that's missing, that DeMar DeRozan, that Kawhi Leonard type piece where you get that closer down the stretch in games. But it's a lot of talent over there in Toronto.
Yeah, all very positive. Hey, around Darko, positive. I love this.
Yeah.
And Damichael, we really appreciate you coming on here. You can check out Damichael's work. He's a co-host of Locked On Grizz, and you can follow him at Damichael C on Twitter. Damichael, thanks again, man.
No problem, guys.